This is who am I? The first question. I was a virgin when I got pregnant. Who am I? Put that out there. Which baby? Correct. Before I ask the second question, I don't. If I can talk loud, right? Before I ask the second question, I need the correct answer for this one. I laughed when God told me that I was going to have a child. Correct? The next question. I didn't believe God when He said that I was going to have a son. So He took away my voice until the child was born. Correct? He said in Zechariah. Number 4. I was the first female prophetess in the history of Christians. Who am I? Wrong. Correct. Next question. I tricked a man into giving me his secret for his strength. He said Delilah. Is that correct? You sure? Next question. I was blinded by God because I was on a killing spree. Correct? Next question. Once upon a time, I told a king that my wife was my sister. Finish. Finish. That's correct. I say correct. I need a correct answer, so your wife didn't get it. Next question. I tried to take over my father's kingdom, but I was killed by his soldier. Who am I? Okay, no more hands for Pastor White. Next question. I was the first person to ascend to heaven without dying. Who am I? Correct. Next question. I was the first king of Israel. Who am I? Correct. Okay. This is A, B, C, or D. Who was the high priest at the time of Jesus' crucifixion? A, Ananias. C, Eli. B, I said I don't see. B, Eli. C, Abita. No, it wasn't me, right? Caiaphas. Okay, correct. Okay. Next question. Which disciple is often referred to as the disciple who Jesus loved? A, Peter. Correct. Then not make me finish, Roy. That did not make me finish. They know it. That good. Max, a hard one. No? So. Who had a coat made of camel hair and ate locusts and wild honey? No, not. Not you again. Who? Chapman? Correct. Last question. Name Joseph two sons he had with the, the Egyptian wife. Nobody know that now? Oh, I thought hand was going up fast. That's correct. That's it for today. You're going to come again.
I am feeling so happy, especially for the youths to see that you guys actually studying your Bible. That is so good. Keep it up. At this time, we will stand and join our voices together as we sing song number 83, I Shall Not Be Moved. And immediately after that, the next voice you'll be hearing is from Mr. Lionel Mack and the panelists. Could you please stand, please? Song number 83, I Shall Not Be Moved.
Jesus is my Savior, I shall not be moved. In His love and favor, I shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the waters, I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. Just like the tree that's planted by the waters, I shall not be moved. Abiding, I shall not be moved. In His love I'm hiding, I shall not be moved. Just like the tree that's planted by the waters, I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. Just like the tree that's planted by the waters, I shall not be moved. On His word I'm feeding, I shall not be moved. He's the one that's leading, I shall not be moved. Just like the tree that's planted by the waters, I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. Just like the tree that's planted by the waters, I shall not be moved.
Right. Good. Testing. Pleasant good A pleasant good afternoon to each and everyone who would have come out this afternoon for AOI. At this time, testing. A pleasant good afternoon again to one and all. Just want to welcome you all to our first district AY. This afternoon, we'll be having a panel discussion and giving the youth an opportunity to chime in, to give their 2 cents, and also to ask any questions that they may have. This afternoon on our panel, we welcome Pastor Sherwin A.E. White, Adventh Youth Leader for the South Leeward Conference, Youth Director for the South Leeward Conference, We also invite Zach Thomas, Adventh Youth Ministries Coordinator, and Sean Joseph, who will be working along with the youths in the district as a youth consultant. So firstly, we'll give Pastor White the opportunity to tell us a little bit about some of the things that are happening or you would have been doing in your ministry for the youths in Antigua and Barbuda.
Yeah. Good afternoon to everybody. Good afternoon to everybody. And it is a pleasure being here this afternoon and to share this table with, I guess I should say, 3 esteemed men, district pastor, we have our island coordinator, and we have Brother Sean Joseph, who served as a former island coordinator, and he is, of course, the representative on the Caribbean Union Conference's Youth Council for the South Leeward Conference. So I'm very happy to be sharing here. And this afternoon, of course, seeing all of you out here and seeing the young ones and the older ones, this is something that is refreshing. It is refreshing because as we think of the developmental path of an individual, each of us, we depend on each other, we feed on each other. And what is very important is for us to understand that God, He has actually surrounded the youth by adults to train and to nurture and to mold their minds. And this, of course, comes to us from the pen of inspiration. So as we think about youth ministry, it is not something that we can deal with in isolation. That's what we cannot do. Because even if you look at the adventurers, we need to have the adults to instruct the adventurers. Likewise, the pathfinders and the seniors. So it's just for us to understand that. So if I can just say that for the year, we have embraced, of course, the principles that we have coming from the General Conference, filtered through the Inter-American Division and the Caribbean Union Conference, as some may know, others may not know. But the theme, it is, I will go. Because what we're looking at is that every single one of us, we must go. We must be on a mission for Christ. That is key for us. The pillars upon which youth ministry stands, the pillars, it is salvation and service. So in order for us to serve, we have to be what? Saved. As a result, as a conference, and we all know that there are 5 islands that actually comprises the what? The South Leeward Conference. So Nevis, St. Kitts, Montserrat, Barbuda, Antigua. So we have embraced, we are going to live His life, we are going to do His work. So as we live His life, we are talking here about experiencing salvation, and we do His work, that is service. That's what it is. So our theme, it sticks with the whole pillars upon which youth ministry is founded or constructed. We have embraced the passage, John 9:4, which says, I must do the work of Him that sent me while it is day, for night cometh when no man will work. So we have to understand that the work that is before us It is not something that can be delayed. It is something that we have to, right, do at this very moment. Of course, as I hinted earlier, there must be synergy between the bodies of the youth department. Now, within the youth department, we have, of course, the adventurers. The adventurers are going to become pathfinders. The pathfinders are going to become senior youth. So there is never a time that we should be segmenting or compartmentalizing when we come to the aspect of ministering to our young people. So we have to understand it's a link. That's the way it is, a link, a link, a link, a link. So the program, of course, it has been rolled out there. We have shared extensively. That's what we have done, what the program of the conference is as it relates to youth ministry. Just permit me to share one last thing, and then I can take, when we get to the questions. Now, okay, let me see. Okay, yes. What we have seen in the past and even present, because there are some places where AY is actually extinct. You don't have any AYs. And I'm talking here about across the world. And for us, and we have heard it, we can see it, that we have been losing countless individuals. That's what we have been doing. Hence, we have to be on a mission of reclamation. That's what we have to do. And we talk about reclaiming. Now, in order for you to reclaim something, it means that something is what? Missing or lost. You have lost possession of it. So what we are doing is that we are embarking on a mission not to reclaim. Now, mind you, those who are lost, we have to reclaim. But those that we have, before they filter out into that bracket where we have to reclaim them, we have to keep them. That's what we have to do. So we must keep them. The philosophy that we have, this initiative, it is one that will be embraced for this quadrennium. So that's the 4 years. We are making our young people knowledgeable in God's word. Thy word have I hid in my heart that I will not sin against you. We are going to encircle them with our love and our support. We are going to empower them, because the leaders that we have today, they will not be the leaders 50 years in the future if life should last. So we have to empower them. And then, of course, once we do so, we publish them. And we will be having our first retreat. We're going to be having the retreats across the conference on the 2nd and 3rd of February with the Union Youth Director. So when the time comes to question, I'm going to continue. Yes, but that's just a little synopsis.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll give the other panelists the opportunity. Brother Zach Thomas, an opportunity to introduce yourself and some of the areas that you work in youth ministry, and any promotions that you have.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure being here this afternoon. Name is Zach Thomas, current island coordinator for the Adventist Youth. And for this year, we are focusing, we are planning a different amount of programs to ensure that our youth are currently active as an island level. So we have sports evangelism, we have training, and we are also dialoguing one-on-one with the AY leaders to ensure that we have functional AYs in all the churches. A problem that we find happening is that AY starts good in January, February, March, but as soon as the year comes to an end, we start dropping the number. Like last year, we know we have about 31, 32 churches in Antigua. We had about 28 AYs functional, having AY regularly, but by the time we reached April, it dropped down to 15. By the time we reached August and September, it was hardly any. So we are trying to empower our AY leaders to have the drive. We know that it's I will always say, and you always hear me say, I believe AY
is one of the hardest departments in the church, meaning, sometimes family life, you have to plan for family life week, which might be once a year, twice a year. For AY, you have to constantly plan program every Sabbath for the year. And sometimes you do get burnout. And sometimes after church finishes and you go home, to come back to AY is tough. So we are empowering. We had a retreat with all our AY leaders last week, and we're empowering our AY leaders to be creative. AY don't have to be a Sabbath afternoon. It can be a Friday evening. It can be a Thursday afternoon. AY can be so many different times. So we, as the island, are just going to be planning events to help our AY and our youths also for that little break now and then in the calendar as we move forward. So as I say, we have a number of sports, evangelism, volleyball, basketball, etc. Domino is going on right now. We have some retreats where we have one in Barbuda and also one that we might do off, like Bird Island or one of these other islands. And we have a number of bonfire and some different programs that we have put in place to ensure that our youths are active when it comes to island level. Also, it helps them to meet different individuals, and also networking is available also.
Okay, thank you so much. Brother Sean, if you'd like to.
A happy Sabbath to all. My name is Sean Joseph, previous island coordinator for Antigua and Barbuda on the Advent Youth Ministry. And I, at present, serve alongside the youth director in the capacity of the Caribbean Union and some of the entities that carry on from that end for youth ministry. What I will actually say is that I would really love to see that our youth ministry continue to grow as we employ, just as what Island Coordinator Zach Thomas just said, as we continue to be creative. I think sometimes one of the difficulties for youth ministry is the exemption of creativity. We keep on doing the mundane, the same thing over and over, and we think that it's going to work. And so with the whole notion of being creative, and creative is subjectional. There's so many different ways that you can be creative. But if we if we continue to be creative and also implement some of the outside entities, persons who have not been functional in the Advent Youth Ministry or even youth ministry, I truly believe that we will see success in the year 2024 and beyond.
Okay. All right, so we'll go into our first question, and I'll leave it to you for you to be whichever panelists would first want to answer the question. And it's one of the questions that the youths have been asking. How is the church helping the new generation to go into the world knowing about God?
Can you just repeat the question?
How is the church helping the new generation to go into the world knowing about God?
Okay. As it relates to the church, I must say that the church has all of the necessary systems in place. Amen. All of the systems. If we look at the Seventh-day Adventist Church, it is the only religious denomination or organ on the face of the earth that cater for its members from the cradle to the grave. Amen. It is the only. There is no other. And what you may not understand, it is this. The church, right, the church that we have, and of course we have different departments. We have to see youth ministries beyond Pathfinder Club that meets Sabbath afternoon and Sunday. We have to see it beyond the Adventurous Club, beyond AY. When we look at the holistic nature of things, so for instance, every individual present here, that is from, of course, the baby that is somewhere there. There is a quarterly that has been designed for that child. That quarterly, if rightly studied, because for instance, just look at the quiz that we had, right? I realized that the moderator was not giving much attention to my little partner in the front here, because every question asked, his hand was up. His hand was up. How old are you? You're 12 years old. Now, I'll tell you this. You go some places, you go into some congregations, you have churches where you have leaders in the churches, they would not be able to answer half of those questions. So when we think about what the church is doing, and first and foremost, right, in the life of the youth and the child, it must be the spiritual development. Because if the spiritual aspect is missing, if that is missing, and so for instance here, the Apostle Paul says that the things that I want to do, I find myself not doing it. And those things that I do not want to do, those are the things that I am doing. He said, who will deliver me from this body of death? He said, thanks be to God. So hear me now. The nature that is fed, that is the nature that is going to grow. So if the nature, the spiritual nature is fed, it means that all of my leanings and inclinations would be what? Spiritual. So if I am feeding myself on the word of God, how can a young man or a young woman keep their ways pure? By giving heed to the word. So if I am fortified that way, every show that I look on television, the company that I have, my place of entertainment, it is hinged on that. It is hinged on that. So the church has created everything. So it's about us now utilizing that. That's what we have to do. Allow the others to speak.
Okay, Pastor White dealt with the whole aspect of the church's organization. I want to speak from a pastoral perspective. Now, the pastor of every church in South Leeward Conference, including this district, every church is assigned a pastor. The job of a pastor is not to pastor only the elderly or the adults. The pastor is the pastor for everyone. There are some gray areas, some questions that youths may have that you're not going to find the answer in a book. Okay? You're not going to find the answer clear-cut in the Bible. It is the job of every pastor to answer these questions with the youth. So we as pastors have to make ourselves, first of all, available to the youth so that accessible, that's a better word, accessible to the youth, so that the youth is able to ask us these questions and we can share together, and for us to be, in a relationship that will help them to grow and mature and develop and help them to make sense of the church as a structure and life overall. So it is the role of pastors to be that involved in the life of the youth and making themselves available to the youth so that they can prepare them for the world.
Additionally, I truly believe, and just what Pastor said, and both pastors said, we have a very robust system, very well thought out system for the youth, and not only just the youth, but the members in the church. One thing that I have always realized, even from a little boy, was that every facet of our existence within the church body is actually catered to. Unfortunately, what I will say, sometimes we don't necessarily look at these platforms as opportunities for growth. And what ends up happening is that we focus on one thing over the other. And so I think sometimes what we really need to do is be a little bit more open-minded to ministry within the church, ministering to everyone in the church, as opposed to just one set of persons, or not necessarily just one set of persons, but just utilizing one set of ministries in the church. And I think if we start more so allowing all the ministries in the church to, in a sense, crosstalk, knowing that every ministry counts, That's one. Two, knowing that every part of every ministry should be able to complement another. I think overall, the question that you ask, we will see more growth, and we will see the opportunity for even our youngsters, our young people inside of all the churches across Antigua and the South Leeward Conference, being able to benefit holistically and wholesomely from all of the elements, all of the different programs, the ministries in the church that are there for us to benefit.
I think one of the aspects that we need to focus on is relationship. And I think that is one of the aspects that we are missing as a church. Having that family bond. I mean, I understand, and which is correct, the spiritual aspect is important and one of the most important. But a number of our youths are struggling financially. A number of our youths are struggling otherwise. Some of them are depressed. Some of them are going through so much that they sit down at church and you're preaching up a storm, but they're not hearing one word you're saying because they're going through depression. They're going through these different things at the time. They're hungry. They didn't eat no breakfast this morning. They didn't have no light to iron their clothes. So I think sometimes the relationship, and I think that's what we are lacking as a church, to be honest, the relationship aspect when it comes to not just our youths, but as a body, is what we need to ensure we work on even more. Always accountable for somebody. Everybody accountable for someone. If Zach is not at church today, Zach should receive a call. Hey, Zach, I miss you at church. Not one call, but more than one phone calls. I miss you at church today. What's up? How are things? Etc. Not only at church, also should you talk to persons. I think it should be a constant communication during the week also. And I think when we build that relationship among youths and church, and the church is a family, I think that also is a good aspect that we can work on.
Okay. At this time, we'll ask the congregation if they have any. If anyone would like to chime in. Oh, sorry. Do you have?
No, the person is to the back. So.
Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to contribute towards the discussion. I accept everything that has been said by the panel. And there are a number of reasons as to why the state of AY in many of our congregation. One of which is that it lacks support from the leadership in many congregations, that the youths are left unto themselves. And believe it or not, the youths want the elderly amongst them when it comes to AY. And conveniently, we say that we're being pushed out as a result of the age category, when we know very well all it means is that the program is designed for those who are under 35, but it doesn't mean that you do not attend. And it needs the kind of support of the leadership and eldership and everybody involved, because we stay away. We find everything to do as elders and other leaders, departmental leaders, to do on the Sabbath instead of being amongst the AYs. Also, and we hear of Eutychus, but you ever wonder why Eutychus wanted to be a church and he went to church? And everything was going on good in church. I mean, Paul was having a grand hallelujah time in the Lord. He went to church. But why he went up on the third loft? Anyway, that's a sermon. But he wanted to. But he fell 3 floors. That's a sermon for anyone here. But also, we need to give the kind of support that it needs coming from the leadership again. Many of our young people love the Lord, but they hate Sabbath. They hate Sabbath.
Why do you think that they hate Sabbath?
I'm answering it. In many of our congregations, the Sabbath afternoons cannot function the way it is designed to function, where everybody come back together and you have adventures by themselves, pathfinders by themselves, and AY by themselves. It's a small congregation. When you let me out of church 1:30, going to 2 o'clock, and I have to come back for 3 o'clock or 3:30 to be a counselor in Adventure and Pathfinder, and then as soon as it's dismissed, the same individuals are expected to be a part of AY. And so we need to plan our services properly. Because you go home, hustle to eat, bam, back to church. And so they really hate the Sabbath because they cannot enjoy it the way it's meant to be enjoyed. I love my church. I love Jennings. Because we are mindful of that. And if church finish after midday, then somebody have to answer. Somebody have to answer as to why we're leaving church past midday. Because our young people need to go home and eat and refresh and come back. So that is why by the time they reach a certain age, they're done. They're done. Something to consider.
Elder,
If I
can just make a, can I borrow a mic that? Yes, if I can just make a comment based on a few statements made. I think that many a times we create monsters, and after the monsters they have been created, we cannot slay the monsters. As it relates to the whole notion, as we talked about, or as you've referenced, the age limit, it was a statement or statements that were made by leaders who actually said that AY, it is only up to individuals who are at 35 years. So then you can't blame the church or the seniors if they said, now, okay, if that's what you claim, it means that we are out of it. So we created that. That's what we did. Because, pardon?
That was sent from GC by the elders. It was the older ones that voted that.
No. What you have to understand, the age range for youth, right? And it is something that is global. A global youth age you would see being between 16, some places say 30, some would say 35. So it is not the youth age. The challenge was that while we embrace that if there's a youth, let us say, Bible connection, we know that the person who is going to represent this district is going to be between 16 and 30 or 16 and 35. The statement did not mean that AY, as we have it here, you should only have individuals who are 16 to 35 present. So that's where we had a major challenge, right? So that's what we have. Now, you spoke also as it relates to the time that church, right, would normally, dismiss. Something that I want to see and something that I am going to be pushing. I even speak with my leaders. When I speak with Sean, I ask him which church you went to in the morning. When I speak with Zach, I ask him which church you went to in the morning. Because what we have is that a number of times we have individuals who are not supporting what? The church's program, because we have become so compartmentalized. So I am family life. So if it's something for family life, I'm going to what? I'm going to support family life. Because you may see someone who is so energetic for something that is health ministry. Man, listen, they can sell the snow to the Eskimos and everything. But guess what happened? If it is a program now, that's health. But if it's a program for personal ministry, you want to know if that person can speak. That's what you want to know. But the church is a collective. That's what we have. So even for our juniors, right? Our juniors, our youth, one of the things that I have been doing, I have been going to the different congregations across the island. And you would be surprised when I get there for Sabbath school. Today I visited another congregation, and of all that I have visited thus far, today was the second time that there was a youth Sabbath school in the church. The second visit. So what we have to do, even as we talk about holistic ministry, it's where everybody, and Pastor Challenger may talk about it too, parents, you come to church with what? You come to church with your children. You go sometimes even because we are not only talking, because remember, when we talk about AYs, the Pathfinder who is here, in 3 years, he is going to be an AY. But guess what happened? If he isn't nurtured in Sabbath school and so on, it's a part of the whole culture. That's what we need to understand, that church, it is not compartmentalized or segmented. It's a full package that is there. So if I am supporting the Sabbath school and everything else, you said that church cannot go beyond 12 o'clock. You can now say, hey guys, we are doing this. We want you to come and support what? Support the AY. We can also say, hey, listen, how many minutes do we need to have an effective AY program? If it's an hour, why start AY at 4 o'clock? If it's an hour, we start AY at what? 5 o'clock. That's what we can do. And we go 5 to 6. When we get into the summer months, when the sun is going to be up until 6:45, why start AY at 4? I can start AY at what? 5:30. And then I just go 5:30 onwards. So we have to be creative and innovative as we look at those things. We have a few more comments.
Yeah, I was also saying, and Pastor Chandra, that's something I wanted to try, just to bring across the time factor. For Sabbath morning, do an AY program, have divine hour in the afternoon, and let me know what's the turnout. I think because the same question he asked, I asked it to my AYs in the chat, and this is just the average times that the church is finished around the island: 1:30, 12:30, 12:45, 12:30, 1 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 12:15, 12:30, 1 o'clock, 12:45, 1 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 12:30, 12:45, 1 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock. That's the average time that church is finished. Now I'm saying, for the examples, sometimes you plan an AY program, persons are not coming back, not because they want to come back. After they eat and they rest, you have a problem with persons coming back. So I'm just saying, do the example. Do divine hour in the afternoon. Start divine hour at 4 o'clock for any church. And tell me if the church is packed like a Sabbath morning. Just any church, do that example and see. The second thing you said about the support, which I agree with, I know many times we tell our AY leaders, even though you have 5 youths, work with them. And you know you'll grow from there. I understand that. But then yet still, We invite in the church Wednesday night. We need everybody to come out on Wednesday night. We need everybody to come out Sabbath morning. We need everybody to come out to Sabbath school. So why is it not the same that we can work with 5 and grow? We need everybody together as one.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'll give the congregation an opportunity.
Just a
to
minute.
share their sorry.
Ella Delarice had a hand up even before Brother John. Yeah, before. Yes. Let's Ella Delarice and then come back to Brother John.
Okay, good afternoon. Pastor White touched the point that I want to touch because I notice that our young people is MIA when it comes to other services. And if an MIA is missing in action, and I agree with you, Pastor, we as parents have a job to do. I am in prayer meeting and I'm in Bible study, but my child is home. So I agree that parents need to play a role. Now, these leaders have influence. Brother Sean, Brother Zach, they have influence. And their leaders have influence. My concern is that we are not seeing our young people come into these night services to know what they believe as Seventh-day Adventists. If you ask some of them, they don't know. And they don't come to pray. Now, my question is, what is the AY doing to encourage our young people? Because some parents say when a child reaches a certain age, they make their own choices. They don't have to come. Some of them say they have to study and so on. But in order for us to have leaders coming to take over from leaders, they need to actually support these initiatives or come to Bible study to know and to be educated, to be edified, because when they become leaders, they have a responsibility to do the same for others. So what are you doing to help the church so our young people can come to these services, not just AY and Sabbath morning, but to make the sacrifice to come to nightly services? Thank you.
Who is it question directed to?
Anyone?
All right, let me just speak in relation to what we have done in the past. And I'm not speaking here from the position where I now sit. Every quarter, every single quarter, there is a Wednesday evening that is dedicated for adventurers, for pathfinders, for AY, for the youth choir, for the adult choir. So guess what happened? They have to what? Plan and execute. That's one of the things they need to do. They have to plan and execute. And even as I listen here, let's not forget, and I have spent every moment of consciousness that I've had in the church, every moment. I would say to people, I started going to church in my mother's belly. And I'll just share something here. As we look at AY, there was never a time in the history of Adventism, what I know of, right, where AY has not faced this challenge that we are faced with. It is probably, and yes, it is more challenging right now than it was before. But if we were to look, when you were growing up, church in the mornings, and then the afternoon, you have just what? You have a handful of individuals who are there. As I would say, we could lament, we could cry over it, or we can use it. Now, if all of us who are here, if this is AY, and for every one of us, we say that, listen, knowing the needs of our young people, I am going to be here next week. Come what may. This is what I'm going to do. And not only that I'm going to come, I'll invite at least one. And if we have another 10 persons come in, and then the next week you have 5 more, and then the next week, and even as I speak about that, and I'm going to say it, is that we have to invest in it, make it vibrant, make it more marketable. That's what we have to do. Because divine hour, quote unquote divine hour, you don't have to plan for that. You have something that is there. And if by chance those who were in charge of that aspect of worship had to put in what you really have to put in to AY, it would suffer as much as quote unquote AY is suffering right now. Because even some of the, now let me make a statement here. Some of the elders, some of the preachers, because when I say preachers, I'm talking of everyone, who present the message on Sabbath, they did not plan. They did not plan. A great majority. Because you know the scripture and you go up there and you just what? You just talk. The Sabbath school leaders, a whole host of them, you have a Sabbath school guide. That's what you have. A booklet with programs that you would just come and what? You would come and generally read. That's what you're going to do. So what we have to do is this. What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do? Do we just lament it? Or do we work with what we have? Pray, be intentional, dig deep. Because even as I lamented the fact that AY has always been challenging, I know of coordinators and directors and so on, who in my days, 40 plus years ago, who dedicated and who sacrificed. That's what they did. One thing they did not do is to give up. They did not give up. And what we are contending with today, people have more allurements out there. So because you have more out there, we got to dig deeper. That's what we have to do. And we are leaders because guess what happened? The church has seen that we have the potential and we have the gifts, so we have to dig deep and do it.
Panelists, pastors, church, Alexander Patrick Trotman, have a problem with the youth ministry. Pastor, you look at that media, that is what made me. I started youth ministry in my country, Dominica. I did everything in AY, leadership training. When I came to Antigua in 97, I realized I only have half. I did the other half, master guide in Antigua. That talk about age in ministry, pastor. I cannot tell you if it's 1990 or 1991, but I can tell you that it started in 90. At that time, I was an AY leader. When I heard this statement, I felt funny. I said, no. What I hear in there, it cannot be what it means. Because I always look at the church as a family. Children cannot go on and have their own way and daddy and mommy not around. Somebody have to be there to steer the ship. So I did my research, pastor. And exactly what you said, that is what came from GC. Simply put, the programs that is going to be delivered on Sabbath afternoon have to be catered for the age group 16 to 35, and our political genius and them that is in the church took it and give it that spin. And from that time in my era, pastor, youth ministry start to struggle. We lose our grannies, our mummies, our daddies, our grandpas, our aunt, our uncle. We start losing them. And then AY start to go down. I want to say to us, I like some of the words Pastor White used, like intentional. We have to be intentional. From the time my pastor walked into this church here to take over, that has been our conversation. Pastor AY, Pastor AY. And he keep promising me something will be done. Something will be done. Because I see youth ministry without that in the church, Pastor. We ain't going nowhere. We staying right here. Because I see youth ministry, adventurers, pathfinders, master guides. That is our breeding ground. That is our greenhouse. That is where we have our seedlings experimenting and doing whatever we have to do. That is where our strength should be. People like me, so I agree. I make my time. I make my time. I want them to hear, partner. Just take it easy. Just give me a minute. I was saying that I make my time. But if there is one individual my age that is hurting for AY, moi. Brethren, I'm begging us, don't let youth ministry die. The day we do that, we can as well shut down this building. We can as well shut down our church. And what some people don't understand, youth ministry, with my research I'm talking about here, when I look at it way back in Genesis, Caleb, Joshua, these people, that is what they were. And as the leaders kept going down, these guys keep taking over. And when we play in our politics, be careful what we do. I learned in the Bible, it is hard to kick against the prick. When you try to destroy youth ministry for your personal gain, it will come back and haunt you. You will not succeed. Yes, Pastor, I stopping now. I just want to let it go, Pastor, and let it go to the best I can. Because I could be very passionate, I could be very rough, but I'm just concerned as to what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing. Thank you all.
All right, thank you so much. And I want to thank everyone for their contribution in terms of that question. Their number. Oh.
Raise your hand, Tamika.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
If anybody knows me, they would know that I've been a AY leader previously, a coordinator, and youth ministry is pretty much still dear to my heart. I am going to comment from a district level, having seen trial and error work before. Now, we speak about the number of persons that come to AY, and we're currently speaking about, the community at large, how we're going to affect that kind of thing. What I would definitely suggest, because of the dwindling numbers and trying to save who is currently coming from each church, I would suggest going back to probably having district AY. If it's a situation where we're coming to Bible Speaks this week, we're going to Jennings the following week, we're going to Bendel's, try to rebuild Bendel's, and rotate it accordingly like that. And I think that would help to build the churches and to build the district at large. I know each church has its own means and its own way of doing things, and everybody wants to build their own church, but sometimes we have to realize what the times are, how things are going, and stop thinking church and start thinking district.
I just want to ask a question. If I can do a census, We have folk from Bendels here. Bendels? How many AYs do we have in Bendel? AY age individuals do we have? So, no, AY age people. Okay, what about Jennings? Yes. Yes, 16 and above. Well, no, those between 16 and 35. How many individuals?
There are quite a number of individuals. I can't give you an exact number offhand, but I'll have to look at the church database and then be able.
Okay, so now let me ask Jennings.
There are quite a number of youths in Jennings.
Jennings, how many? Pardon?
This is Jennings.
Oh, Jennings.
Yeah.
How many? Okay, Bible speaks. Okay.
And in terms of persons coming back to AY,
Yes. Now, so let me just tell you the reason I asked that question. 2011, when I went to Bastille Church, when I spoke with the AY leader, the question that I asked was, how many AY age persons do we have in the church? And you know what happened? I did not get an answer. Maybe about this amount. Maybe about that amount. One of the keys in terms of ministering to people, we have to know who are the people there to be ministered to. Because how do I know that this is not the representation for AY in the district? Because we do not have the statistical data. So I need to be able to say, I have a census that, listen, in Jennings, we have what? We have 25. In it's Bendels, right? Bendels, we have what? 32. And here, we have 55. No. Remember, I'm just calling some numbers here. Now, it is dual, right? It is dual. But what I'm saying, unless we know what our numbers are, because I'm just sharing an evangelistic approach to this. I do crusades, and I remember one night I was there, and I preached, and I was making call. Man, and I had 9 persons who came to the front. And I stayed there calling again, maybe about for another 15 minutes. And then one additional person came. And then I called. Now, when we had a meeting later, and I asked the folk what's going on, what I discovered is that you had only 12 visitors under that tent. So what happened? When I have now 10 persons who would be up front, it means that there were only 2 visitors there. So something that I would do, once I have a crusade every night, my ushers need to tell me by the time I get up there to preach, how many visitors are under the tent. So if I make a call, if I know I have 100 visitors, and I make a call, and only 4 come forward, I can continue to call, because you have people there. So what we need to do is to have our numbers, know what our numbers are, so that we can now cater for the numbers. But unless we know, and the Bible says that the first thing you have to know the state of the flock. So that is something that is key for us to do as we move forward in terms of ministering to those folk. And Elder T, listen, this work would never die. It can't die. That's it. It just cannot die. We are going to go through some rough patches and so on, but the work can't die. We have individuals
who are invested into this. And because they're invested into it, it is going to continue. And there are people who want to what? Who want to benefit from it. So something that we would say when you talk about churches, a church in a community, it was started there. And if the church was once vibrant, we have to now look back at the blueprint, why it was vibrant. And we have to what? Model things that way, and we can get back to that point.
All right. So we have a few more questions, but I'll do it in a two-part question, and so we can get through.
Use the mic. Use the mic.
The first question is, what are the healthy habits to help us as youths to grow spiritually? What are the healthy habits to help us as youths to grow spiritually? Then, what are some of the challenges youths face in building these healthy habits? Again, what are the healthy habits to help youths grow spiritually? And what are some of the challenges youths face in building these healthy habits?
Okay, great question. The same habits that it takes to grow a mature Christian, the same for youths as well. Prayer, Bible study, service, worship, and yes, a strong devotional life that includes that, and some of the spiritual disciplines as well. You know, when you devote yourself to spending quality time with God. You know, these are age-old, but they are true, they are tested, and it's guaranteed that when you would spend time with God's words, encounter God's words. Matter of fact, there's an encounter series. You know about the encounter series? 1, 2, 3, 4. It is a series of Bible study and spirit of prophecy that is guaranteed to not only give you the knowledge that you need, but the spiritual foundation that you need to grow. You have to use service as well. One thing I learned about youths is that youths are not boring people. They want to be active. You know, when we had that, the Union's Youth Congress in St. Lucia in 2015, a lot of community services, a lot of projects. Youth need that opportunity to serve from that position that they have grounded in. They serve out of that relationship with Jesus Christ. Because it is impossible for you to encounter the word, spend time with God, spend time in worship, and have no desire to serve. Okay, so these are guaranteed that when we spend time doing these, we will grow spiritually and the youth will be stronger for Jesus Christ.
Let me say something. I have a nephew, he's 14 years old. And he would always talk to me about Roblox. For most persons in here, they know what Roblox is? Okay. I had no clue. And it still doesn't make sense to me. But I'm not interested in it. The thing here is, I started understanding a little bit more about it. Why? Because of him. And he was very tenacious, very interested, very invested in this Roblox. And I asked him one day, why are you so interested in Roblox? Because it's exciting. These are answers that he gave me. Because it's exciting. I like it. And so I said to him, okay, well, you have your schoolwork. What are you going to do to make certain that you have enough time to spend on this Roblox? And he said okay, I'll do all my homework because I want to study Roblox. And he gave me all this long list of stuff that he wanted to do. Listen, as youth, we have to spend the same amount of time that we invest in all of the other secular things. When I was a young boy, now granted, I didn't want to be in the church. And growing up in the 70s, I did not want to be in the church. But it took me a few years after to understand that I can only give out what it is that I put in. And as youth, if you're going to put out, as we like to say, some persons would say, okay, well, youth are bored. And granted, there's some things that can cause them to be bored. But my question is always, and I always have to look at it at myself when I was at that age, what am I as a youth? And I'm speaking to youth. What am I as a youth? What are you as a youth investing in yourself as a Christian? Because it's all fine and good that, of course, you love the secular things. And it's good. You live in a world that you have to occupy. So the clothes, the food, even some of the music, there are things that you're going to be interested in, but how much of that are you interested in when it comes to the spiritual things? And I'm not talking about the church, because a lot of us, we like to talk about the church. I'm talking about your connection, your relationship between you and God. If you are so invested in what I don't know, okay, music. So a lot of ladies would want to listen to a particular type of music. How much of your time that you spend listening to Christian music to develop your Christian walk with Christ? For men, you're into other things. How much of that time will you carve out to be more invested in the things of Christ so that you can be stronger witnesses, stronger custodians when it comes to youth ministry or even function in the church? A lot of time as Christians, our leadership, our membership is a little defunct. Why? Because we're not spending, just as what Pastor said, we're not spending the time to nurture the things that will help us grow. Training is an important facet when it comes to youth ministry. We have to first train our minds. We have to first train our ability to pray. And a lot of times, for many of us, we don't spend time with God. And because we don't spend time with God, this thing called church or youth ministry will not be important to us. And so sometimes that's why we become so bored, because our minds are so focused on other things other than what we really and truly need to be.
Can I just say one word here? I'll use a good friend of mine, youth director of the union, Pastor Smith. While we were in St. Kitts there, and then former coordinator Joseph spent a little time with us. There's something that he said. He said for the spiritual formation of his children, cell phone isn't a part of it. Tablet isn't a part of it. And you're talking now, one is about 11, the other 9. Said that, listen, I sat them down. It is not because we cannot afford it. We can afford it. But you do not need it. You don't need it. As it relates to the shows that we are going to look, or watch, we look at family shows, together. That's what we are going to do. So there's no time that they're going to be unsupervised. We are going to read the Bible together. We are going to memorize Bible passages together. These are things, because if we are investing in the academic future of our children, we have to be willing to make the same investment into the spiritual development of our children. So because I guess some time ago when I was at New Bethel, I think Zach came to my office and he was talking. You were telling me about your brother with the roadblocks business. And we would allow our children to be there watching the stuff with violence, people killing, people shooting, people cursing. Remember I said before, the nature that is fed, it's the nature that is the nature that grows. So every single action, every song we listen to, every paragraph that we read, you are either building the spiritual or you are building the carnal. That's what it is. Don't underestimate your devotional life. Every single day, they have to read the Bible. They have to sing spiritual songs. Now, I am not going to be like the proverbial ostrich
and have my butt exposed. I'm not going to do so. When I was growing up, I knew of Shabarank's songs and all of these things. Yes, I know of Yellow Man and all of these folk, right? I knew all of the songs on Michael Bolton album. But guess what? While I knew those songs, it is because I heard them. I have something for music. But I knew what? Maybe all the hymns in the Bible. I know them. And I know the spiritual songs. We have our young people today. They don't know the hymns. We were in Barbuda last week. I had a youth and evangelism rally. Just imagine, the young people don't know hymns. They don't know it. Why is it that they don't know it? It is because we did not what? Teach them. We did not teach them. So the generation that knew nothing about Joseph, it is because the preceding generation did not teach them. So we have to understand that the future, the legacy of the church, it depends upon what we do and how we teach them. So not because the director is not someone that you're in favor with, you're going to keep that child away from Pathfinder. Just imagine, I went to, now listen, I'm sharing here, but what I share here, it's because I am passionate about this. I'm invested into this job. I'm invested into it. I told an individual, I said, a shame. You imagine a Seventh-day Adventist officer of the church. You are sending your daughters to, is Brownie you call it? Brownie? Or Girls Guide? Whichever it is, I said you should be ashamed of yourself. How in the world you could be a leader in my church and you have Adventurers and Pathfinder Club and you're sending your daughter to Girls Guide? How can you do that? So parents and adults, we have to supervise our children. We have to let them know. We have to say to our young people, listen, put down the phone and listen. When I was in St. Kitts, some folk, I said, listen, it is time for the word. None of the children should be there doing what? Playing games. Or sometimes the pastor is about to preach and you give them a coloring book. No, let them listen. You better believe it. No matter how boring the preacher is, no matter how long he preaches, if that child listens, they're going to gather at least one or two things. We are talking about the spiritual formation of our children. That's what we are doing. And even for us who are adults, I speak passionately about this here, so because we have to make sure that we do it. The future of the church depends on us. When our pioneers sacrificed in the past, they did not do it so that we can cede everything to the devil and the world. So we have to be committed to it. There was a hand to the back.
Pastor, one of my concerns, well, you kind of answer it, but still, we speak about that in terms of aspect of songs and everything, that we might know the worldly songs or the unholistic song. But then you need to remember that some of us who are coming into the faith were once a part of the world. That's what we know. And I have an issue. Sometimes it's more like, not that I'm having a problem with being the Adventist church baptizing persons to come into the faith, but then we baptize them, we bring them in, we leave them there. That is it for them. Now you expect me to come into the church and be able to repeat the fundamental belief like the older folks can when you don't foster that spirit in me when I come in. So everything that I know about the world is going to remain in me. If it's one thing with the world, it have things to gravitate that it's easy to gravitate to. You can easily fit in and everything. But then when we come into the church aspect, the church is not as loving as we expect it's supposed to be. There's so many judgmental persons among the congregation. If you're doing something wrong, rather than saying, hey, this is not the way it should go, or try to correct me in a more Christian-like manner. We go in cliques there and talk and backbite and everything. So where you think the youth is going to go? We're going to go back out of the door the same speed we come in. Now, if we are supposed to be gathering healthy habits that we speak about here today, if we don't properly teach, train, and nurture those youth, what is going to happen to them? We're just going to fall upon the wayside, and we're going back out without no proper guidance, no understanding as to what we believe in and what we should believe in. So maybe on a pastoral level, you can look at more creative ways to try to capture not only the youth, even adults as well is leaving the church for whatever reason we don't know, but then try to look at ways as when we bring them in, we don't let them go back out.
The church, I know there's a hand there. The church is the church. The church that Jesus, I'm using church loosely, right? The church that Jesus encountered mirrors the church that we have today. It's going to be the church that is going to continue. But what I want every one of us to do, every single one of us, if there's going to be one person who would not, if there's going to be one person who would be supportive of the youth, if there's going to be one person who is going to transfer the legacy, let it be me. That's what we have to do. Let it be me. And if we have so many individuals here saying, let it be me, the circle is going to widen. That is what's going to happen. The circle is going to widen. And if by chance, and for our young people here, if you have any unsavory encounter, you have some bad people in the church, right? And the truth is, once you study the inverse lesson this last week, and you listen to what Jesus said, those bad people will remain there until Jesus comes. We call them the tears. That's what we call them. And you know what God said? Leave them right there. He said you can't pull them up. The only time they're going to come up, it's until judgment time. Until the harvest time. But what we have to do, we have to understand that the salvation that we are experiencing, it was not purchased, right, by any elder or anyone here. Remember, it's easier to say. It's easier to say than to practice. But I can guarantee you this. There is at least one adult in the church that can be trusted. There is at least one adult in the church that you can lean upon. I know this. I went to a church that I was pastoring, and the people talk about how bad the church is and how bad the church is. There was a young lady who came in from a Pentecostal church, and after about 6 months at a communion, she gave a testimony. She said, this church is such a loving church. She said, I never experienced this where I'm from. And you know, I am there, right? Because guess what happened? People are cursing the church. But now this person is coming in here saying that this church is a loving church. We have more loving and supportive people in this church than the bad people. The truth is that the noise sometimes, the noise can be deafening, but you have to put on those spiritual headphones and connect with individuals who love and support you. Trust me on this.
It shows it takes just one person to change the narrative.
Pardon?
It takes just one person to change the narrative.
Okay, my question is for the Pathfinder Club. This is my perception. I think we basically have an opportunity to do evangelism using the Pathfinder Club. Reason being, we have a lot of non-Seventh-day Adventist children coming to the clubs, and this is what I'm seeing. We get them invested. They basically pass the age of Pathfinder, and they go right back out where they came from. So my question is there anything that can be done
basically not for a club seeing it and doing it, but something from the conference level, the union level, the GC level, that we can basically capture these young people and keep them if we only use the Pathfinder as an evangelism aspect or ministry.
Thank you very much for asking the question. Now listen, the program that we rolled out, and I had the meeting at St. John's with all of the youth leaders, those who came by, capitalized on it. If we understand this, and remember, I congressary at the Sir Vivian Richards Stadium, I shared it. We would like our clubs, Adventurers, Pathfinders Club, for us to have at least 30% of the members being non-Seventh-day Adventist. That's what we want. The clubs should not only be in the church. Just listen to me. The club should not only be in the church. And within the clubs, we have to do things that appeal to the folk. That's what we have to do. Now, if the adventurer gives that 30% to the Pathfinder Club, and then if that Pathfinder Club gives that 30% to what? To the AY. And you have programs where you have Sabbaths outside of Pathfinder Day, Adventurers Day, Children's Day, where you have the individuals doing what? They have an active role. I had a Pathfinder Club where Pathfinder Crusade, I gave a sermon and non-Adventist preached. And he preached, and when he made the call, guess what happened? He answered to the call. And his parents were there. And his parents came forward and got baptized also. So we have to see the interconnectivity of the clubs. That's what we have to do. None exists in isolation. So if we have those Pathfinders, as they stay, then they transfer to what? They transfer to AY. And what we have to do also, we have to keep in mind that baptism is not the end game. There are some individuals who would not be able to be baptized, because I have had clubs where parents said, my child is going to come, but the child is not going to be baptized. And I recall, a group of elders saying, you know what? If you want to be baptized, just get baptized. And I called the guys, I said, listen, if the parents, they trust us to give us that young girl to be in the club, she comes to church and everything, but she says she can't get baptized. Why am I stressing? She is in church. She's living according to the principles of the church. When she gets to that age, she is going to make that decision. So if I can get all of the young guys in Jennings or Golden Grove or whatever, and they're coming to church, praise God. If they come with a slipper and a short pants, praise God. And we just have them there. We are going to mold and shape their minds. That's what we are going to do.
Pastor, if I'm to add to that, very often we misunderstand the philosophy of these clubs. The adventurer, the pathfinder, and I'm going to say this, the ambassador.
Yes.
And that name is very intentional. The philosophy is that a child comes into the adventurer club. The curriculum is teaching them about the doctrines of the church and how the church functions. It continues into Pathfinder. So by the time Pathfinder completes the final class of Pathfinder, they should know what it is to be a Seventh-day Adventist, right? Now, at that point, it's for the Pathfinder director and the counselors and for the church, the leadership, to be working, because there's some topics that you're going to have to bring the elder or the pastor in to teach. Things like the sanctuary, what it is to be a Christian. And that is when the church leadership interacts with those young people. And we have to be very intentional. Before my pastoral work, I worked as a youth leader. And I worked in a church that baptized 24 young people within a 3-year span. That's Grace Farm Seventh Adventist Church. One year we had a Pathfinder crusade, we baptized 6. The next year we had a crusade, we baptized 12. And the next year we had another crusade and we baptized 6. And these individuals were at that point in their pathfinding experience where they made a decision for God. Yes, there were parents that said, we didn't want our children to be baptized and all of that, or they're too young. But we need to understand it, that these clubs have a curriculum that teach children to become Christians, to become Seventh-day Adventists. And the expectation is, and this is why the name of the club is so intentional, after Pathfinders is Ambassador. We don't practice it here. It's not rolled out and fully implemented here. But look at that word, ambassador. Look at the meaning of it. The expectation is that when a child comes through these clubs, that they become an ambassador for Christ, right? And if you look again at the senior youth program, the structure of the senior youth program is not like the curriculum that you see along there. Why? Because you should know what it is to be an Adventist, and you should run your own ministry now based upon those spiritual gifts that God has given to you. I'm talking about the senior youth ministry now, right? Because if you look at the curriculum, it's me and God, me and the church. You know, it is your development. You are at that point of development where you now take the Adventist message to all the world. In which generation?
My generation.
You notice the change? The change is personalized. We now reach to the point in our Christian experience, our Christian walk, where we have the information, know what it is to be a Christian, know what it's like to be an Adventist, and we become now an ambassador for Christ to the world, right? So we need to understand the philosophy of the club and how the church looks at it. Let me let you know, the Seventh-day Adventist Church is no fly-by-night organization. The Seventh-day Adventist Church is a well-structured, well-ordered church. And it is only the Holy Spirit that inspired our leaders to do that sort of organizational work that we have right now. So we want to understand that and be clear about that.
Can I just add another thing too? As we've seen over the past couple of years, we've realized that the culture within, specifically young people, have changed. Heavily changed. Of course, you have that heavy influx of social media and all of these other things that are helping to guide the behavior trend and what they expect from either a leader, their parent, peer-to-peer. And so what probably could be another emphasis that's given within even the Pathfinder Club is sometimes a little bit more person-to-person interaction outside of the Pathfinder session that happens on a Sabbath afternoon or Sunday. Take, for instance, when the young person would leave Pathfinder on a Sabbath afternoon, okay, the session is good, whatever the case is, a lot of times you would not have much interaction with that youth until either probably Thursday or Friday heading into the weekend. What ends up happening is that the child is still left void. And so the only influence that that child would have would be their peers or their parentage. And so what ends up happening, there's a fight now when you get to the weekend. Because now you literally have that understanding of what it is that they would have got over the weekend, fighting against what they would have been hearing during the week. And so once the week comes, they hear something secular. Then the weekend comes, and then you hear the more spiritual, and it's a literal war. And I have two friends of mine, two parents, that they're not Seventh-day Adventists, and they're very secular, and it's pretty much the very same thing. And I remember speaking to a director for a club, and I said to her, listen, I think probably, and I was focusing on those two, well, it was 3 children, 2 of one and 1 of from another family. And I said to her, listen, I think you really and truly need to focus a little bit more. Even if you have one person, it doesn't make a difference if the person is not a counselor. If you have that one person who does that continuous checking in on those young persons every single day. Listen, times have changed. And we're going to have to use some unorthodox methods to reach and to keep our young people. sometimes the word is not enough. The music is not enough. Sometimes it's going to take you to have someone within your club to constantly reach out to those young people, to hold them. Building relationships. Zach would have spoken about it from the time he started speaking. If we don't start doing things differently, what's going to happen is we're going to keep on having this conversation over and over every single year. Why? Because we're not doing anything different. And so it simply means that what we could possibly do inside of the local club, because I know one Pathfinder club is actually looking at that method, and we could possibly earmark 2-3 persons within the club. They're not counselors, they're not teachers, they're not instructors, none of those things. But what their main duty is to do is to communicate with those young people. They're in and amongst the club every Sabbath. Every time club starts, they're there. But their main duty is to create that culture of relationship and bonding so that that young person still remains focused on a lot of the things that he or she would have been hearing at club sessions on a Sabbath or a Sunday.
So at this time, we'll give the youths from each congregation an opportunity to respond to what was presented today. I know we would have listened and we would have benefited from the thoughts and ideas shared. Are there any youths from Jennings who would like to respond to what was shared today? Anyone from Bendel's? Bible Speaks?
A lot of things were said today, but an idea that I liked was the whole idea of District AY. As we can see, like a lot of the individual churches may not have that many people, but I feel like it would be a nice thing to have more interaction, interacting with more youth. So I think that's something that we can try.
That was Bible Speaks. Jennings, Bendels? All right. So I would just like to thank each of the panelists this evening for your contribution. I would like to also thank the congregation. Just your presence here today shows your support to the youths in the district, and we look forward to your continued support. All right, thank you so much.
All right, just before you go, just want to say one thing here. No matter what we do, no matter how much we strategize, no matter how much we plan, if we don't pray, and if we don't put it at the feet of Jesus, everything is going to crumble. Every single evening, I make sure that I pray for all of the young people in the conference. And I pray for my youth leaders. That's what I do. I do so because it is important. It is important. Prayer changes things. And if we should pray for our young people more, and if we really support them more, give them that hug, give them that word of comfort. And let me just say something to our young people. One of the things that, I did, and I know a lot of others, when we were young, I guess Pastor Challenger would attest to the fact, Elder Joseph, we made friends with the older people. Now, when you have friendship with the older people, you just go and you just visit them. Those older folk, when we want to go to camps and you want to go other places, who do you think would actually give us the what? The money and so on. Am I talking true? That's what we are doing. So don't isolate yourself that I am just young. and them old people. Listen, listen, Natalia, are you friends with Elder Joseph? Huh? Elder Joseph. That spoke. Huh? Yes, you're a friend. So if you're a good fan, you always give him hey, how you doing? You know, by the way, I prayed for you today and everything, and so too. Be friends. You know what? You go into Trinidad free. He would sponsor you to go. Yeah. Am I not speaking the truth? You see, he gave me the thumbs up. No, so what happened? It is a what? It is a two-way street. And we have to get to that point where we see each other as a part of a body. There isn't any fight. There shouldn't be no fights. Old people and young people, there should not be. So, and let me just do one push. Remember, for our youth leaders, our retreat for the second and the third, make sure that you are registered. One of the cultures that we are going to be pushing, I am doing this. If we have a deadline for something, we make sure that we are advertising things for 3 months. So if a deadline is the 26th, the deadline is what? The 26th. Can I just share with you some good news? Ain't no good news. The entire Caribbean Union, we had so many individuals who were lined up to go to the International Pathfinder Camporee in Gillette, Wyoming. South Leeward Conference had its group in too. But you know what happened? With the whole culture of procrastination, tickets are going down, but Pastor Challenger gets what we say. We are going to buy. We had our deadline here. And you know what? We have 14 persons who paid. But others say we're going to come tomorrow. Now you know what happened? There is 0 tickets. All of the tickets have been sold out. So not a person in the Caribbean, not one of the conferences. Because you know what we have been doing? Waiting. And this person says tomorrow, we have to have a culture of discipline. We work together. So registration closes on the 28th of January for our retreat. Get registered. It is going to be life-changing. God bless you.
Thanks once again for all the panelists. I pray and hope that this was an informative session, and whatsoever we learned here tonight, it would not stay here in our club, but we can extend it wider to the community. At this time, we will have our Vesper by Lionel Mark, followed by our closing song, hymn number 83, I Will Serve Thee, and then Elder Trotman will give us our benediction.
Thanks. So this evening we look at a widely known story, Bible story. 1 Samuel 17 speaks of the story of David defeating Goliath. In verses 41 to 44, shows us that Goliath curses David and his God. And the passage reads, So the Philistine came and began drawing near to David, and the man who bore the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was only a youth, ruddy and good-looking. So the Philistine said to David, Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds, and of the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. Now there is nothing in David that struck fear or respect in Goliath's heart. Goliath actually felt insulted and they sent David. Right? However, the verses 44 5 and 47 tells us of David's faith by the way he replied. And it reads, Then David said to the Philistine, You come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you and take your head from you. And this day I will give the carcasses of the camp of the Philistines to the birds of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. Then all the assembly shall know that the Lord does not save with the sword or with sword and spear. For the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. Now, David was so infatuated by Goliath defying God, and he had so much trust and faith in the Lord that the Lord would be with him. He did not care how tall Goliath was. He did not care about heavy armor. He did not care about anything. He said, I come against you in the name of the Lord of hosts. He knew the power he had, for God was with him and would deliver him. This evening, I pray that as youths, we will trust in the Lord whatever we are called upon, and also to have faith in the Lord as great as David's against Goliath in any battle that you're facing or come to face. Right?
Shall we stand for prayer, please?
And before we pray, we'll just sing number 85 from the Advent Youth Sing. I will serve thee because I love thee. I will serve thee because I love thee. You have given life to me. I was nothing before you found me. You have given life to
Let us pray. Father in heaven, we want to thank you for what transpired here today, this afternoon. Oh God, help us to look, listen, learn, and most of all, Lord, put it into practice whereas this mercy is. In Jesus' name, amen.